Bienvenidos, Ushamdi, and welcome Anne Arundel Community College learners from the Spring 2023 semester taking the CTS-233 Section 400 Network Programmability course. This is the Cisco Networking Academy's DEVASC 200-901 Certification Exam Preparation course, and in this lab, 8.3.7, we're going to take a look now at the second part of the lab, where we're going to be creating Python scripts to do the exact same thing that we did using Postman. In other words, we're going to be writing Python scripts using the requests, which is the HTTP for Humans library, and we're going to be sending REST requests leveraging the RESTCONF Yang data modeling format. So very, very cool. We're going to be doing all of this to an iOS XE device, which is our CSR1kv. Again, you don't have to have the CSR1kv to do this. You would need some kind of a Cisco iOS XE device. Maybe it's a 3850 or a 9300 or whatever the case may be. But this script would work on any iOS XE device. So let's dive in and take a look and see what we're doing in the second half of this lab. So if you remember from the first half of the lab, we used Postman to generate a number of GET and PUT requests leveraging HTTP. And again, this is all about RESTCONF, and it's RESTCONF because we're leveraging the Yang data models. And we're going to see what that looks like right here in our first script. So I'm going to go ahead and say more part6.py. In fact, let's VI this file here and see what we've got going on. So up at the very, very top of the file, what are we doing here? Well, we're importing the JSON library and the requests library, and we're disabling warnings, right? So we don't want to see any SSL warnings because remember, RESTCONF, RFC 8040, we're using HTTP now. HTTPS should no longer be used or supported. And so we're saying, hey, disable any SSL warnings that we're going to get. Now I create a variable name called API URI. And what do we assign to that? Well, we assign it the path that goes to our RESTCONF data, right? This is what makes this a RESTCONF activity and a RESTCONF action, is that we're not saying, HTTPS going down to like some version 2 API like we did with MapQuest. Here we're saying, yeah, no, we want data. We want the IETF interfaces, right? So this is making this a RESTCONF activity here. And then we've got our header information. Now this might look a little bit different because this is something we haven't done before. So we're basically saying, yeah, the content I'm going to be sending in could be JSON, and I'm accepting JSON, right? That's basically what we're saying with this. And remember, we had to type that in over here in Postman, and I'm not sure that we still have that up here in... it would have been one of the put requests, I guess, but it looks like the put requests are gone. So anyway, we would have placed that in our body. And you can also see here, remember the little code tab in Postman. If I was to close this, it sits right over here. So here's this GET request that we're making, right, with RESTCONF. And if I look at the code, we can see that, boy, that looks awfully familiar. And you've even got the authorization in there, right? But you can see there's the content type. There's what we're accepting. And so the same header information is over here in the script that we're currently working on. All right, so there's the header information. There's a basic auth as a variable. That's a Python tuple that's going to hold our username, password information. Here's another variable, get response. And what is that value going to be for get response? Well, it's going to be a requests, an HTTP response object that we get from this request, where we say request.get, right? Now, prior to this in module 4, we use that URL encode method. So here, we're just sending a GET request, and we're just providing everything that's going to be required. The URI, the auth, basic auth information, which is the username, password tuple, the headers, which are our accept and content type, and then verify false, because again, we don't want to do any verification. Now, that GET response holds our HTTP response object. And so what we can do is I can say, okay, hey, with that response object that we have, I want it in JSON format. Give me the JSON data, right? And so we create a variable called JSON data that's going to hold the JSON data that we get back from that GET response. And then we're going to print that out. And here's what I'm going to do right now. So just hold on one second. We're going to comment that out. We'll see that in just a second. So let's go ahead and run this. Let's say Python 3 part6.py. And all we're going to get back is the response code, right? A response code of 200, that's what we're looking for. Something between 200 and 299. And so this is good news. This means that we're able to successfully connect and we get a legitimate response code back that says, hey, things appear to be working. So the next thing they want us to do in the lab, which is step 4 of part 6, is we're going to kind of clean things up here a little bit. And we are going to make the printout a little prettier, right? So again, if I was to go ahead and say, and not that printout, but I'm going to show you here in just a second. If I was to say VI, and we can actually just pull that back up, part 6, I print the response out. Well, now let me go ahead and print out, let's print out that JSON data. So if I say print JSON data, well, let's see what we got from our response object. What does that look like, the JSON data? And there it is, right? And it's kind of a dumpster fire because it all comes firing out to the screen here. It's really not formatted. And so we want to do that. Let's format that output. Well, in order to do that, I'm just going to go right back in here. I'm going to comment this line out that's got the ugly format. And we're going to do this. So we're going to use the JSON dumps, which is going to take JSON data that's in a JSON string, and we're going to go ahead and print that out with indentation of 4, right? And that's what JSON dump. Remember, the S stands for string. So let's run this and let's see what we get. And there you go. We get the JSON object that we took from the JSON string that was there, and we indent everything, and it looks beautiful. So now if we wanted to operate on this and parse some of the data, maybe do a for loop that dives in here and grabs the name of every loopback address or grabs the description of every loopback address, we could certainly do that, right? So just a much prettier output here. So now for part 7, what are we doing here? Well, part 7 is going to be the put request, right? Just like we did in Postman, but here is how we could automate that with Python. So let's go ahead, and I actually just named this one RESTCONF-put. So we'll say VI RESTCONF-put.py. And what do we have at the top? Well, the 2 import statements, because we need JSON in the request library. And then we disable warnings here. And then we've got a similar URI, but this one goes all the way down to loopback 99. So what are we doing here? Well, we are going to configure this loopback 99, or if it was already there, we're going to go ahead and overwrite that, or change the configuration. And again, the headers are the same. The basic auth is the same, but here is the Yang config. And in the lab, excuse me, they show you loopback 2. Well, I'm just going to kind of change this up. We're going to do loopback 99. And if I'm not mistaken, we are actually on the router over here. So if I was to say, oh, looks like the connection closed. Let's log back in. We'll say Cisco 123 exclamation mark. We'll say show IP interface brief. And you can see that there is no loopback 99 right now. So what's going to happen when we run our script, which is doing a put request? Well, let's go ahead and find out. Let's run the script. So there's the code that we're sending, right? That's that Yang configuration. And actually, I should probably come down here and explain what we've got that's a little bit different. So here we're sending, there it is. We're taking the JSON dumps Yang config. That is our data. We're sending in a JSON data. And then we've got here, we're checking to see if the response, the status code, I should say. So the HTTP response status code, is it greater than or equal to 200 and less than or equal to 299? Meaning, yeah, everything was great. So the status would say, hey, okay. And in here, remember, this is a placeholder. The curly braces are a placeholder. We're using the format method with the string, and we are putting in the get response status code. So whatever the status code is, it's going to show up right in here. And if this is not true, that the status code we get is between 200 and 299, it's going to print up an error message. with the status code that we got and the JSON, or I should say the error message that we get back from the get response JSON output. All right, so again, this is just checking to make sure that everything went as planned and that we get a legitimate response back. All right, so let's run this put request here. Let's save this here and let's say Python 3, and we're going to say restconf.put-py. Now, the interface doesn't exist. What's going to happen here? Fantastic. We get the status OK 201. Again, we don't print anything out. That's all right. How could I check this? Well, let's jump over to the router. Let's say show IP interface brief, and there is Loopback 99. Now, you can even see that the interface is up. Everything is 100%. Everything looks great. And so that is really what the lab wanted us to do. And that is going to wrap up Lab 8.3.7 using RESTCONF to access an iOS XE device. We did some really cool stuff, right? We've got Postman knowledge now as to how to do that with Postman. We know how to get the code out of Postman and cut and paste it and run it as a script. And then we created our own Python modules that are using RESTCONF to configure an iOS XE device. Very, very cool, right? So this is what network automation is all about. Again, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're enjoying the video series and that this is helping you in your studies. And as always, I hope to see you in the next video.